The day kicked off on a frantic note as neither my wife nor I were stirred by the alarm clock, thanks to a power outage overnight. Racing against the clock to make it to work punctually, my wife, more so than I, considering my later start time of 9 a.m. and a mere 15-minute commute. With her habitual morning ritual of checking emails disrupted by the rush, she forgot to power down her computer. As I moved to shut it off, a subject line caught my eye in an email received a few days prior. Aloha for a great time. My heart sank as I delved into its contents, discovering my wife's plan to jet off to Hawaii with another man while I embarked on a 2-week business trip. It felt like a brutal blow to my core. Now, let me offer some context. Molly, my wife, and I were introduced by mutual friends over 12 years ago who sensed compatibility between us. As it happened, we shared a passion for fitness and a health-conscious lifestyle. Molly was deeply involved in yoga instruction and personal training, while I pursued a career in marketing for a mid-sized company nurturing aspirations for expansion. Whenever possible, I immersed myself in outdoor activities, be it hiking, mountain biking, running, or any other pursuit under the sun. We shared numerous common interests and made quite the striking pair. Molly, standing at 5'6", with cascading brown locks, brown eyes, and a jaw-dropping physique, complemented my own 6'3" frame, blonde hair, blue eyes, and athletic build perfectly. Was it love at first sight? No, but our bond grew from friendship to romance over time. It took a couple of years before we tied the knot, and for the past 8 years, I believe we were genuinely happy. At least I was convinced of my happiness until I stumbled upon that email, realizing our marriage was teetering on the brink. It appeared that this guy, Martin, and Molly had been scheming this romantic escapade for quite some time. She was well aware of my upcoming business trip, a pivotal opportunity for both myself and the company. I was slated to be away for 2 weeks with a select group, aiming to secure several significant accounts. Success could mean a promotion and a substantial increase in salary. However, as I absorbed the contents of that damning email, such career aspirations paled in comparison. Determined to unearth the truth, I delved into Molly's inbox, searching for clues about Martin. Conveniently, she had stored all their correspondence in a folder labeled trips. Molly wasn't particularly tech-savvy, but my daily interaction with computers provided me with a navigational advantage. It quickly became apparent that she had been entangled with this individual for the past 6 months. But why? I racked my brain, unable to pinpoint any glaring signs of discontent in our marriage. Our life together seemed idyllic, characterized by mutual enjoyment of each other's company. What could have driven her into the arms and bed of another man? My mind raced as I prepared to head to work, but before leaving, I made sure to copy all the saved emails onto a thumb drive. I needed time to digest the contents and gather more information about Martin, perhaps even uncovering the motivations behind Molly's actions. After shutting down her computer, I hurried off to work, consumed by thoughts of her and this mysterious Martin. Initially reeling from the shock of discovery, anger began to simmer within me, igniting a desire for revenge on an unprecedented scale. I've never been one for violence or vendettas, but this betrayal cut deeper than I could bear. While part of me yearned to trace the origins of this affair, I ultimately dismissed the notion. Instead, my focus shifted to learning more about Martin and devising a plan to shatter their worlds with a very public humiliation. I had 6 weeks to orchestrate something unforgettable. Upon arriving at work, I shut myself in my office and let my mind churn. What I needed was not just information on Martin, but also the intricate details of their impending trip. Gradually, an audacious idea began to take shape, a plan to sabotage their journey before it even began, exposing their affair in a manner that would leave Molly unable to deny it. It was risky, but the thought of her facing the consequences of her actions spurred me on. As the day progressed, I managed to squeeze in some actual work amidst my incessant contemplation of the plan brewing in my mind. When it came time to leave, I lingered in my office for over an hour, meticulously outlining the necessary steps and potential risks involved. I knew that if things went awry or my involvement was exposed, it could spell jail time. Yet, I was willing to shoulder that risk for the sake of justice. To gather more intel on Martin, accessing Molly's email and computer was imperative. Initially, I considered downloading software to crack her passwords, but swiftly abandoned the idea. Leaving behind any digital trace was too risky. If an investigation were to ensue, I couldn't afford for my involvement to be uncovered. Thus, I resolved to acquire the information in a manner that couldn't be traced back to me. Over the next few days, I took precautionary measures. I purchased disposable cell phones from various stores located miles outside of town, paying in cash. Additionally, I invested in a small laptop for anonymous use at locations with free Wi-Fi, ensuring my activities remained unconnected to both work and home. Equally, I procured wireless video cameras and bugs to discreetly place around the house, hoping to capture any incriminating conversations between Molly and her paramour. The thought of them engaging in extramarital activities chilled me to the bone, but it was a necessary risk in gathering vital information for my plan to unfold. As time elapsed, I made a conscious effort to maintain an appearance of normalcy around my wife, ensuring she remained unaware of my suspicions regarding her affair. It was challenging, but gradually it became second nature to smile affectionately at her, all the while seething with resentment at the thought of her with another man. Perhaps I missed my true calling as an actor. During this period, I took precautions to ensure my actions couldn't be traced back to me. Using one of the disposable phones I'd acquired, I reached out to old friends. My first call was to Will, a college buddy with whom I hadn't spoken in over 14 years. "Will, it's Thomas. How have you been, man?" Initially, Will struggled to place me, but after some reminiscing about our college escapades, recognition dawned. "Hey, Thomas. Yeah, those were the days, my friend. So what's been happening in your world?" After giving him a brief update on my life post-college, I broached the reason for my call cautiously, opting to discuss it in person. "Listen, I need some help, and I was hoping we could meet for lunch to talk about it. What do you say?" There was a moment of hesitation before Will responded, "Yeah, sure, anything for an old college buddy." We arranged to meet at a location far from my workplace, but conveniently close to his in a few days' time. My hopes rested heavily on his assistance, aware that time was slipping away and I had no other viable options. Meanwhile, I strategically positioned cameras and bugs in our bedroom and living room, anticipating those areas to be prime spots for their conversations and activities. During the first week of surveillance, there was nothing of note, leading me to speculate whether she was rendezvousing with Martin elsewhere, deeming it too risky to return home. However, the following week revealed a chilling scene, my wife and Martin indulging in each other's company for over 2 hours in her own home. It sickened me to witness, yet I persevered, hoping to glean any useful information they might unwittingly reveal. Yet their conversation yielded nothing substantial. Upon checking the cameras the next week, I discovered that they had returned once more. However, this time, it wasn't for intimate liaisons, but rather to discuss their forthcoming trip. Finally, I obtained the crucial details I sought: flight number and departure time. As I listened, the excitement in my wife's voice grated on my nerves, fueling a rage that surpassed any I had ever known. While thoughts of violence briefly crossed my mind, I swiftly dismissed them. Instead, I desired a more enduring form of punishment, a lifetime of misery for both of them. In my darkest fantasies, I envisioned confronting my soon-to-be ex-wife on her deathbed decades from now, relishing the opportunity to reveal how I had sabotaged her dream trip to Hawaii. I pictured the shock and despair in her eyes as I delivered the final blow before walking away, leaving her to contemplate the ruin I had wrought upon her life. This revenge would be my legacy, haunting them until their dying breaths. With a renewed sense of determination, I acknowledged there was still one crucial task left to complete, albeit one fraught with risk. Through my investigation, I uncovered more about Martin's character. He and my wife shared a workplace as personal trainers at the Sing Health Club, and it appeared he had a notorious habit of engaging with married women. Well, that pattern was about to meet its demise in a very unpleasant fashion. Martin resided in a nearby condo complex, not far from the health club. Taking a calculated risk, I decided to conduct some surveillance, taking a day off from work under the guise of attending to personal matters before our upcoming business trip. Equipped with a digital camera boasting a powerful zoom, I staked out his residence for several hours. The complex was unremarkable, comprising modest 2-bedroom units. It seemed his neighbors were absent during the day, and there were no surveillance cameras in sight. A fortunate circumstance for what I had in mind needed to be executed covertly. Nerves gnawed at me as I met with Will, knowing that what I was about to ask of him constituted the greatest risk of my entire plan. Yet, if successful, it would be undeniably worth it. Spotting Will entering the restaurant, I waved him over to the table I had chosen, a secluded spot towards the back, with only a handful of patrons enjoying a late lunch. "Long time no see, bro," Will greeted me as he approached. "So what's the occasion for this meeting?" Time had evidently taken its toll on Will, his appearance resembling that of an extra from The Walking Dead. I wasted no time, eager to broach the subject at hand. If Will couldn't provide the assistance I needed, I would have to seek alternative avenues for obtaining what was required. We delved into reminiscences of our college days, particularly the legendary parties we used to host. Once a notorious party animal, the toll of those wild nights had clearly caught up with him, aging him well beyond his years. Sensing the urgency of our conversation, I cut to the chase and addressed him directly. Will, the reason I asked you here was to inquire if you or someone in your network could assist me in acquiring some party favors for a private event I'll be hosting. I handed him a list. You help me out? I'm more than willing to compensate you for your time. As Will scanned the list, his initial shock transformed into a grin. Sure thing, man. Sounds like it's going to be one hell of a bash. Any chance I could snag an invite for an old college buddy? Relieved by his willingness to assist, I nodded. Absolutely. Just procure what I've asked for, and I'll provide you with the details of the party. Cool, but I'll need some upfront cash to secure these items, Will noted, eyeing the envelope I had prepared. I passed him the envelope containing several $1,000s. Will this suffice? Whoa, you're planning quite the shindig, aren't you? This'll cover it, and then some, he replied, impressed. When do you need this stuff? I instructed him to meet me the following week with the goods, emphasizing the importance of promptness in communication. After exchanging contact details, including the number for my new cell phone, we departed the restaurant, our business concluded. With just 2 weeks left before my trip, timing was of the essence as my wife and her lover planned to depart the day after my departure. I had successfully met with Will, who provided everything I had requested. Now the critical task at hand was strategically placing these items to ensure they remained undiscovered until the opportune moment. 3 days prior to my trip, I returned home early, finding my wife's suitcase meticulously packed for her illicit getaway. With careful precision, I inserted a few surprises into her belongings, concealed in a way that would evade detection even upon unpacking and repacking. She wasn't my intended discoverer of these items after all. The next step involved a considerably riskier venture, breaking into Martin's residence. While his work schedule was known to me, my lack of experience in such matters posed a challenge. Nevertheless, I equipped myself with a lockpick set and a guidebook procured from the depths of the internet. Practice sessions on various locks at home and work had honed my skills, instilling a degree of confidence in the success of this aspect of the plan. It was early afternoon when I informed my boss of my need for an extended lunch break. Soon enough, I found myself standing outside Martin's condo, equipped with my lockpick set. To my own surprise, I managed to breach the lock in just over a minute and swiftly gained entry. Efficiency was paramount. I aimed to complete my mission swiftly and leave no trace behind. Clad in latex gloves, I made a beeline for his bedroom, where I discovered his packed bag awaiting his departure. Mimicking my actions with my wife's belongings, I carefully added a few travel gifts that would undoubtedly leave a lasting impression on their trip. Moving to the kitchen, I located a can of coffee, seizing the opportunity to further my plans. Emptying the contents into a mixing bowl, I discreetly inserted a few packets before refilling the can and restoring it to its original position. Satisfied that everything appeared undisturbed, I exited Martin's residence and made my way home, with just one task remaining. A couple of days before my trip, I reached out to a friend who had a connection at the airport with the TSA. Armed with all the pertinent details regarding my wife and Martin's flight, I entrusted my friend with disseminating the information discreetly. However, I emphasized the need for utmost secrecy regarding the source of the intel. Jasper, I need to ask you a favor, but it's imperative that you keep the source of this information under wraps, I instructed, providing him with the flight specifics and Martin's name, omitting my wife's identity. Assured of his discretion, Jasper assured me he would pass on the details to his cousin, leaving the rest in their capable hands. Before finalizing my preparations, I removed all traces of surveillance equipment and disposed of them discreetly. Additionally, I added a few surprises to Molly's car, ensuring her troubles would only multiply upon discovery. The day before my scheduled departure, I decided to indulge in a bit of mischief at my wife's expense. Upon returning home from work, I deliberately assumed a somber demeanor and took a seat, feigning distress. "What's wrong? Did something happen at work?" my wife inquired, concern etched across her features. Something did indeed happen. The clients we were supposed to meet abruptly canceled our meetings. Now it seems I won't be embarking on that trip, and the company will miss out on a significant opportunity for growth, I replied with feigned indignation. I observed the shock and apprehension flicker across her face, confirming my suspicions that she was anxiously contemplating ways to ensure my departure so she could indulge in her escapades with Martin in Hawaii. Can't they still send you and attempt to salvage the situation with the clients? After all, you and your team had invested considerable time and effort into this project. It would be a shame to see all that hard work go to waste, she suggested, unwittingly provoking my ire with her mention of shame. Suppressing a chuckle, I decided to put an end to her distress. Just teasing, honey. The trip is still on, don't worry, I'd reassured her. Relief flooded her features, and she offered a relieved smile. You really had me going there for a moment. So, are you all packed? Yeah, just a few final items to add to my carry-on, and I'll be ready to go. Will you miss me terribly while I'm away? Any plans for a girls' night out or something?" I quipped, struggling to contain my simmering anger. "No, nothing planned. I'll just be here eagerly awaiting the return of my loving husband," she replied, her words nearly causing me to burst into laughter, if not for the seething rage brewing beneath the surface. The following day, my wife drove me to the airport for my departure. Before parting ways, I pulled her close for a long, impassioned kiss, knowing it would be the last one we'd share. With a sense of finality, I bid her farewell and joined the rest of my colleagues as we boarded the flight. The journey was uneventful, and upon arriving at our destination and checking into the hotel, I placed a call to the house, utilizing the hotel room phone. Receiving no answer, I left a carefully crafted message, feigning distress. "Honey, I've made a foolish mistake. I left my phone in the cab, and I won't be able to reach you until it's returned or replaced. If you need to contact me, please leave a message at the front desk, and I'll be sure to return your call later this evening." Of course, I hadn't actually forgotten my phone. It was a deliberate ploy to avoid her calls. The following day, I ensured my phone remained switched off during my meetings with clients, preventing any interruptions. Upon returning to the hotel room, I checked for messages but found none, leading me to speculate that perhaps her calls had been intercepted by airport security. As the meetings progressed, exceeding even our initial successes, we concluded early and returned to the hotel. Upon accessing the messages on the hotel room phone, I noted one from my wife, another from her father, and a surprising third from a DEA agent, a development that brought a satisfied smirk to my face. Turning to my cell phone, I discovered several messages awaiting my attention. Listening to the messages on the cell phone, I maintained a facade of concern as I absorbed the distressing news. My wife's tearful plea for help echoed through the receiver, pulling at my heartstrings despite my inner satisfaction. Following her message, my soon-to-be ex-father-in-law's voice crackled through the line, conveying urgency as he relayed my wife's arrest and desperate need for my presence. Lastly, the DEA agent's stern tone cut through the air, detailing the gravity of the situation surrounding my wife's drug-related charges. Despite my inward elation, I concealed my true emotions behind a mask of seriousness, aware of the need to maintain appearances among my colleagues. The plan had unfolded seamlessly thus far, but I understood the importance of feigning shock and concern to avoid any suspicion falling on me. The following morning, I reached out to my boss, vaguely alluding to a pressing family matter without divulging specifics. Graciously, he granted me leave to attend to the emergency, emphasizing the importance of my swift return to finalize our deals with the clients. Without delay, I boarded the earliest flight back home, eager to execute the next phase of my scheme. Upon touchdown, I retrieved my lost cell phone and dialed my father-in-law's number, ready to play my part in the unfolding drama. "What in the world is happening? I received your message, but I can't wrap my head around it. Molly arrested on drug charges. That's absurd. She's never been involved with drugs. Where did this happen?" I interjected, though I already knew the answer. "No, she was traveling with, a friend to Hawaii, and they were stopped at security. Illegal drugs were found in her possession and her friends," her father responded, his voice laden with embarrassment. "Wait a minute, hold on. She told me she'd be at home, that she had no plans. Who is this friend she was supposed to be going to Hawaii with? I bet one of her girlfriends talked her into it, leading to this mess," I speculated, my frustration mounting. Her father hesitated before replying, "No, it wasn't with one of her girlfriends. The important thing, Thomas, is that she's in trouble and needs our help. She loves you, and I know you love her," so I cut him off abruptly, unable to contain my amusement. "What are you telling me, Dad? Who is she traveling with?" I demanded, relishing the moment. There was a pause before he cleared his throat uneasily. "She was traveling with a man, Martin someone. He's also been arrested, but—" "So let me get this straight," I interrupted once more, my tone incredulous. "My wife, your daughter, was jetting off to Hawaii with another man while I was working hard to provide for us, and she ends up getting arrested for drug possession. Is that what you're telling me?" Yes. Unfortunately, that's what I'm telling you," he confirmed reluctantly. After a prolonged silence, I finally spoke, my tone firm and resolute. "Okay, I need to speak with her lawyer first, then this DEA agent, and finally with her directly. Once that's done, we'll reassess the situation. But she had better have a damn good explanation for why she was planning to fly to Hawaii with another man and why drugs were involved." Without waiting for a response, I ended the call abruptly. Upon arriving home, I discovered a barrage of messages awaiting my attention. Listening to each one in turn, I noted the expected message about my misplaced cell phone, followed by a series from Molly pleading for contact while I was away on my business trip. Numerous messages from her father and her lawyer also demanded my immediate attention. I promptly reached out to the lawyer, scheduling an appointment for the following morning, and then contacted DEA agent DeFranco, agreeing to meet him at his downtown office later that afternoon. After a hasty cleanup, I headed out, my mind racing with thoughts of whether I had covered my tracks effectively to avoid any repercussions. Before I knew it, I found myself seated in what seemed like an interrogation room, Agent DeFranco entering with a folder in hand. "I'm glad you could make it. I have some questions regarding your wife that I'm hoping you can shed light on," he stated, glancing at the contents of the folder. "I can assure you my wife has never been involved with drugs. In all the time I've known her, she's never even touched anything illegal. She's a yoga instructor, for God's sake. Why would she be mixed up in drugs?" I maintained, injecting a touch of indignation into my tone, though Agent DeFranco remained unfazed. "People make foolish choices for various reasons," he countered, still fixated on his paperwork. "Did you have any knowledge of your wife's plans to travel to Hawaii with this man, Martin? She claimed he was just a friend, but Martin insists they were embarking on a romantic getaway. Do you know him? Were you aware of her infidelity or the drugs?" His gaze pierced through me, demanding answers. Taking a moment to compose myself, I responded evenly. "I had no inkling of any of this until I spoke with my father-in-law earlier today, but I'm finding it difficult to believe. She must have been manipulated into this." "She's too good a person to be involved in such things," I added, treading cautiously, wary of tipping my hand. I knew Agent DeFranco was skilled at detecting deception, so I chose my words carefully. He sighed, his expression grave. "Unfortunately, it seems you were unaware. Your wife was indeed involved in an affair with a drug dealer. We've already conducted a search of his premises, uncovering further evidence, and soon we'll be executing a search of your residence as well. You can choose to cooperate and grant us access, or we'll obtain a warrant. Either way, we'll be conducting the search shortly." Despite the advice her lawyer would likely have given against it, I agreed to the search of our home. It seemed a strategic move for self-preservation, showcasing my transparency and lack of intent to conceal anything. Soon, the house was swarmed with DEA and FBI agents, along with a couple of their canine companions, meticulously combing through our belongings. They confiscated a few items, including pill containers from the medicine cabinet. The following day, during my meeting with Molly's lawyer, I recounted my encounter with DeFranco and the subsequent search. His reaction was less than pleased. "If you're approached by any law enforcement officials again, I must insist on being present before you provide any answers. Is that clear?" He instructed firmly, to which I silently acquiesced. Growing increasingly frustrated, I asserted, "Let me make one thing abundantly clear. I demand to know every detail leading up to my wife's arrest. All I've gathered so far is that she was on the brink of boarding a flight to Hawaii with this man Martin. If either you or she expects my assistance, someone better start divulging how this situation unfolded. Do I make myself clear?" His response was evasive. "You're aware I can't discuss your wife's case with you." With that, I abruptly exited the room. Later, I visited the jail where Molly was being held, requesting to see her. In a room filled with several other inmates meeting with family or lawyers at round metal tables, bolted to the floor, I observed her arrival. Clad in an orange prison jumpsuit, devoid of makeup, and with her hair hastily pulled back into a disheveled ponytail, she appeared utterly worn out, as if she hadn't slept in days. "I'm so glad you're here, baby," she cried as I approached. I was about to embrace her when a guard intervened, prohibiting any physical contact. Her tears flowed even more freely at this restriction. "It's okay, we'll sort this mess out," I reassured her stoically, "but right now, I need to hear your side of the story. How did you end up on the verge of flying off to Hawaii with this guy?" She continued to sob. "Thomas, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." "So it's true," I stated flatly. "You were having an affair with this guy, Martin, this drug dealer. How could you? Weren't you happy with me? Don't you love me? I just don't understand. You and him, coupled with the drugs, what were you thinking?" I waited, knowing she didn't have an answer. Please believe me when I say I've always loved you," she pleaded desperately. I regarded her silently for a long moment before responding. "I might have considered forgiveness, but you shattered my heart into a million pieces. There's no forgiveness left for you. When I leave here, I'll be contacting a divorce lawyer. All the locks on the house will be changed, and your belongings will be sent to your parents' place. You're no longer part of my life. I want nothing to do with you. And tell your lawyer not to use me as a character witness, because I'll have nothing positive to say about you. Goodbye, Molly. I hope things work out for you." Despite her protests and pleas, I turned and walked away. I didn't waste any time. Straight after leaving the jail, I headed home and began packing up Molly's belongings. The next day, I arranged for all the locks to be changed, ensuring she couldn't enter the house again. I also set up an appointment with a security company to install a top-of-the-line system the following week. Within days, most of her things were boxed up, ready to be sent to her parents' house. Despite Molly's persistent attempts to reach out and talk, I ignored her calls. As far as I was concerned, she could go to hell. Once things settled at home, I returned to work, and to my satisfaction, we successfully signed the major clients we'd been chasing. Soon after, I was promoted with a corresponding raise in pay. Divorcing Molly turned out to be relatively straightforward, with a fair 50-50 split and no alimony, with her being responsible for covering her legal fees stemming from the drug arrest. She continued trying to contact me, but I preferred to keep my distance. In court, the evidence against Molly was so overwhelming that her lawyer advised her to accept a plea deal for a shorter sentence. She wasn't pleased, to say the least. Martin, on the other hand, fought vigorously to prove his innocence but was ultimately sentenced to 15 years. Molly received a 5-year sentence, marking the end of a tumultuous chapter in my life. On the day of Molly's sentencing, she requested one final meeting with me before beginning her time behind bars. Despite my reservations, I agreed, and we met at her lawyer's office an hour before her court appearance. Molly's eyes were swollen from crying as she looked at me, her voice quivering with emotion. "Thomas, I just need you to know that Martin meant nothing to me. It was always you that I loved and will continue to love. I'm so sorry for hurting you like this. It was never my intention. I hope one day you can find it in your heart to forgive me." Listening to her plea, my heart ached with sadness and frustration. "Molly, I need to understand why. Was it boredom? Did I fail to satisfy you in bed? Or was it the outlier of forbidden excitement? What drove you to destroy our marriage like this?" My voice carried the weight of disappointment. She paused, struggling to find the words. "I honestly don't know. Maybe it was the thrill of doing something wrong, but I've always loved you." "Clearly, your love wasn't enough to prevent this betrayal," I replied, my tone heavy with disillusionment. "I hope this is the last time I have to confront you, and I never want to see or hear from you again. Use your time in prison to reflect on the consequences of seeking excitement at the expense of everything we had. I imagine you'll find plenty of excitement behind bars, especially once those inmates catch sight of you." My words were laced with a bitter edge, and Molly's tears took on a new quality tinged with fear. In the years that followed, the company experienced significant growth, and I steadily climbed the corporate ladder to a VP position. When the opportunity arose to lead our New York office, I embraced it eagerly, bidding farewell to my old life and relocating to Manhattan. Selling my house, I settled into an apartment in the city. Throughout these years, Molly's attempts at contact persisted, marked by occasional letters that I promptly returned unopened. I was resolute in my decision to leave that chapter of my life behind and forge ahead. 7 years had passed, and life in New York treated me well. Content with my single status, I enjoyed the company of different women, rotating through brief relationships without any intention of settling down. One day, while seated in my office, a call came through from the lobby, informing me that a woman named Molly was waiting to speak with me. I instructed my assistant, Mary, to have Molly escorted up while discreetly arranging for security to stand by. Handing Mary a note, I requested her to call me shortly after Molly's arrival. A few moments later, Molly entered my office, but she was a shadow of her former self. The passing years had etched lines on her face, and her once vibrant aura seemed dimmed. Her appearance was tired, and her attire, though elegant, hinted at a bygone era. I regarded her with a detached gaze, devoid of any emotional response. "What do you want, Molly?" "Thomas, I need to explain. I had no knowledge of the drugs found in my bags. Martin must have planted them without my awareness. I'm not involved in drugs. You have to believe me," she pleaded. "Molly, you shattered our marriage for a fleeting affair, deceiving me all along. Why should I trust you now? What drives you to seek me out and spin another falsehood?" I questioned, my tone tinged with skepticism. "You don't understand. I still love you. I want us to be together again," she implored, her voice cracking with emotion. Before she could continue, the phone on my desk rang, and I put it on speaker. "Yes, Mary, what is it?" "Leona called to confirm that you should get 4 tickets for the opening, as her parents are coming into town and want to meet you," Mary informed me. "Let her know I'll buy 4 tickets. Also, find out where her parents are staying. I'd like to send her mother a dozen roses," I instructed, concluding the call and turning back to Molly. "You were saying," I prompted. Molly's eyes welled up with tears. "Who's Leona?" she asked softly. "Just someone I've been seeing, but that's beside the point. You're not here to discuss my personal life," I replied coolly. "You mentioned you still love me. I appreciate the sentiment, but let me make this clear. I no longer have any feelings for you. That ship sailed the day I learned about your arrest and your plans with Martin. Your betrayal ended any love I had for you. Now please leave and don't come back. Do you understand?" But I swear I had nothing to do with those drugs. I was set up. Martin must have. I interrupted her by slamming my hand on the desk. Molly, stop lying. You cheated on me and you're still lying to my face. I don't believe you and I don't want to hear any more excuses. It's time for you to go, and I've instructed security to ensure you don't come back. Do you understand? I demanded sternly. She nodded silently, tears streaming down her face. I escorted her to the door where the security guards were waiting to escort her out of the building. Once she was gone, Mary entered the room. What was that all about? Just bidding farewell and wishing her a good time, I replied with a wry smile. Thanks to everyone who took the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing if you haven't already. Feel free to share your thoughts on the events in the comments below. Take care.